It's aviation's biggest mystery ever. I mean, and it's the last plane to go missing, actually, even now in 2025. You know, if you look it up, you realize 2014. And the reason why I think people really, it still lingers in people's minds is in 2014, we know that a plane the size of a Boeing 777 can't just disappear, but that's what we've been told. And even 10 years later, we still don't have any explanation that makes any sense. We don't have enough evidence.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is the most expensive search and intensive search that's ever been done in history.
Right? And we have the technology now to search the ocean floor as well. So they mapped huge swaths of the ocean floor on the 7th arc where they claim that this plane must have gone down based on these Inmarsat satellite pings. And really what I would tell people, to get to the truth, we have to realize one thing. First is the United States government must know what happened to a Boeing 777 that was flying rogue for 8 hours, according to them, past our military exercises, our super sensitive military bases, such as Diego Garcia Military Base, past our over-the-horizon radars like Jorn has in Australia. And all these radars were supposedly like turned off that night, these critical defense radars. I mean, the excuses are just unbelievable. So I don't think people should be that surprised that when some military footage leaks on the internet of an operation of a plane that's been missing for 11 years, like, yes, it may seem incredible what we're seeing, but what I try to do is demystify kind of the technology, the science. And today what I'm hoping to help demystify too is like the special operations aspect of it. Like, what are our intelligence agencies like able to do, willing to do, and how are they able to, you know, lie to us?
For those who aren't familiar with MH370, will you just give us a synopsis from beginning to disappearance?
Yeah, I think to really break it down, you know, you start with Kuala Lumpur. That's where this flight was flying, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, on March 7th, 2014. The flight was at 1630 UTC, didn't take off until about 1641 UTC, I believe was the time. And it's flying northeast to Beijing. This is important. Plane's flying to Beijing, and it's actually loaded up with 20 semiconductor engineers that are connected to a U.S. aerospace defense or U.S. defense company. So 40 minutes into the flight, it's over the South China Sea. It's outside of Malaysia and Thailand. Suddenly, the plane goes dark. This is the first impactful moment, event of the plane. Plane goes dark. Now, for several days, we just thought that's the plane crashed over the South China Sea. They were searching there. There was a guy on an oil rig claims he saw the plane on fire for a few brief seconds in the right direction. It wasn't until a couple days later that the Malaysian government came out and said, oh, the military actually was watching the plane on radar. Of course they are, because you can't make a plane go dark off of radar, military radar, not a civilian airliner. And they say, oh, the plane actually turned back around. It turned around when it went dark and started flying back towards, there's some argument whether or not it was flying back towards Langkawi or Penang, but basically flying back towards the nearest airport to go to land, slightly closer than going back to Kuala Lumpur, its originating point. So the plane is flying back. And then we find out much later that there was a cell phone pinged the cell tower over Penang, near Penang. So this would mean the plane must have been very low when it passes over Penang about 20 minutes, 30 minutes after the plane goes dark and turns back around. Now, for whatever reason, the plane does not land. This is still one of the biggest mysteries for me in the investigation, which is why did the plane not land there? In an emergency event, if it was a fire or something like that, just land the plane, get it on the ground as fast as you can. But this now, the plane diverts again. So now it was flying to the west, but now it takes a northwesterly turn through the Straits of Malacca, over the ocean, to the Nicobar Islands. And this is where it's seen by another eyewitness, Catherine T. She is a very reliable witness. She definitely saw the plane. She sees a massive jumbo jet with a glowing kind of orange tinge around it, haze around it, with dark smoke coming out of the back of it, flying very low. So, you know, not like even super high in the sky. Very unusual sighting in the middle of the night. And this is the final kind of point where she doesn't see it. She just kind of sees it disappear. She goes inside, comes out, plane's not there anymore. But this is the location where we now have videos within 100 miles where she was at, showing this plane disappearing in two military videos. The official story, or the story we're being told in the public at least, is that, oh, we picked up some satellite pings from this point here where we lost military radar contact with the plane. We got some satellite pings, and we're going to have independent people online, bloggers, you know, call them experts, I guess, these days. They're going to interpret these satellite pings and determine that this means the plane went south from the Nicobar Islands and flew for 5 hours until it got to the South Indian Ocean and then it must have run out of fuel, and then it must have hit the ocean and sunk into the ocean. That's what we're being led to believe. The story that I present, or at least the story the videos present that have reemerged, is that point in the Nicobar Islands is where this operation was conducted on the plane, where we have 2 drones, one above it, one next to it, and that we see, I think, a weapon being deployed against the plane. And then subsequently, we got a cover up because, much like probably, if you want to compare it to something like TWA Flight 800 or something, some type of event where the United States can't admit that we were involved in the operation.
At what point, and where did the evidence come that this plane made contact with a U.S. naval vessel?
Yeah. So there was actually, it's only reported in the China Times, the day after the plane disappeared, a report that there was an intercepted communication between the U.S. Navy and the pilot of MH370 saying that the plane was disintegrating in an attempting an emergency landing. And that report also has a time associated to it, 2:43 a.m., which is a wild time to pick because if you convert that into UTC time, assuming it's Malaysian time, it converts into 1843 UTC, which is exactly when that plane would have been in the Nicobar Islands where we're seeing it on these videos, like around the same time Catherine Tate was seeing it in the Nicobar Islands. And so if that's true, then that's a direct connection to the U.S. Navy being in contact with the plane. And to me, it explains why they wouldn't land at Penang as well. Why didn't they land that plane? That's something I still kind of struggle with. I imagine they got a communication. You get a communication on the radio, says, go to these rendezvous coordinates. We're the U.S. military. We're going to, help you out. Or you can tell them anything at that point, I imagine. So that's kind of my speculation on why they went to that point, why they didn't end up trying to land the plane. But it may also just not have been safe. I've spoken to some pilots. I've spoken to FAA security director, Billy Vincent, about this like fire scenario, what a pilot would do. And yeah, you want to get the plane on the ground, but you're also overloaded with fuel. So you have a weight consideration. It's nighttime. The airport might not even be open. So, you also have to determine whether or not you have light. And if there was some sort of fire or let's say espionage or sabotage done to the plane and the plane literally had no power, which is what we think the situation was, there's no lights on the plane then if you have no power. So trying to land the plane with minimal or no lighting might also be extremely difficult. And the conventional view right now, which actually this was a very fringe theory previously, was that the pilot somehow pulled all this off, which to me is just incredible to try to imagine how a pilot can make a plane go dark, like entirely go dark to the point where no one can see anything about it. And the pilot, like everyone looked into him and there's no red flags at all. Like his coworkers loved him. He's a great guy. Like the stuff about his wife and him being a weird person was like all misinformation. Like his wife's always supported him. Florence DeChangi, who I know you said I'm the #1 investigator, but I'll give her the hat. She did a huge amount of research initially into this. She got his medical records and found there's no mental issues or anything like that. And he was not an Islamic jihadist or anything like that either. People were trying to paint him. So
in addition to that, it doesn't explain the smoke, right?
Doesn't explain really anything, honestly, about the situation at all. And that's where I would tell people, like, a lot of trying to figure out what happened to this missing plane is we have to push aside our biases and our preconceived notions and just look at things unbiased. And if we do that, then I think the truth really just shines to the surface, which, going back to the beginning, is there's no way the United States government doesn't know what happened to this airplane. Like, not in 2014, not with the surveillance capabilities that we have.
And not in 2025 now.
No, definitely not now, no.
We have the ability to,
recently you've had even just Michael Kratsios, the White House technology and science advisor, saying that we have the ability to manipulate time and space in a prepared presentation that clearly would have been edited and what have you and reviewed. Yeah. You have President Trump now multiple times saying that we have weapons that nobody understands, that nobody's close to us in technology. I think we're finally now getting to a point where people can look at these videos and what's happening here and realize, like, oh, we might actually have super weapons that, we are hiding for national security that, we would, in theory, use on an operation if the situation was called for it.